Chosen one, listen closely. Heaven has stopped everything to bring this word to you. This moment is not random. You were never scrolling by chance. Something deep in your spirit already knows this message is meant for you. You have been walking through a season where silence screamed louder than thunder, where prayers seemed to vanish before reaching heaven, and you wondered if God forgot your name. But this was not punishment. It was a test, one designed by divine hands to reveal the hidden strength that only pressure could bring out. You see, the hardest tests are never marked by written questions, but by unseen observation. When no one was watching, heaven was. When no one clapped for you, heaven wrote your name in light. God didn't need to test your worth, He already knew it. But He wanted to show you who you are when the world turns its back. You didn't know that the silence itself was the stage of your proving ground. Every unanswered prayer, every night of crying on your pillow, every season where doors closed before you could even knock, it was all part of a divine script. You weren't being punished. You were being purified. You weren't being forgotten. You were being hidden for the right moment. Because only those who can stand faithful in the dark can carry light without arrogance when dawn arrives. You wondered why the attacks came all at once. Why people who once cheered for you suddenly turned cold. Why you had to fight battles you didn't start. But heaven saw it differently. The test wasn't about the attack, it was about your reaction. Would you curse the darkness or carry your lamp? Would you complain? Or would you cling? And yes, you chose the right way. You stayed when others walked away. You forgave when revenge looked sweeter. You prayed even when your mouth trembled. That's what made you pass. Because the test wasn't designed to break you, it was designed to reveal the unbreakable in you. There were moments you thought you failed. When your faith wavered, when you cried, "Why me?" But even then, heaven was smiling, not because you were perfect, but because you didn't quit. The Father knew your limits, but He also knew your potential. He wasn't testing your strength, He was unlocking it. You see, chosen one, every time you felt like giving up but chose to hold on instead, angels recorded it as victory. Every time you said, "God, I trust you," through tears, the heavens shifted slightly in your favor. What looked like a storm was actually an altar, where your endurance became incense rising before the throne. Do you understand now? You were not losing, you were being watched. You were not forgotten, you were being measured for a mantle. And when you didn't curse the process, you qualified for promotion. Because the test wasn't about results, it was about response. Many are called, but few are chosen. And the chosen are those who endure divine silence without abandoning divine purpose. You were called to be among them. You are not ordinary. You are a living testimony that faith still stands when feelings collapse. Even when the silence stretched too long, even when it seemed like heaven had muted you, your endurance spoke louder than any words could. That's why now, a divine shift is beginning. God is saying, "I saw you in the night. I measured your heart in the fire. And now, I am calling you higher." Heaven doesn't promote comfort. Heaven promotes character. And what you proved in silence has marked you for the next season of glory. Your name has been spoken in the courts of heaven. The test is over. And you passed not because you were flawless, but because you were faithful. Now, the same God who allowed the silence will soon speak loudly in your life. You will see why He closed certain doors, why He withheld certain blessings until your spirit was ready to carry them. The pain had purpose, the waiting was warfare, but victory has already been declared in your name. Lift your head, chosen one. The dawn is near. The storm did not steal your future, it shaped it. You are walking into a new season of divine visibility. What was once hidden will now be revealed. And when you shine, you will do it without pride, because you remember what the darkness taught you. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 14, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. So let your light shine again." Heaven is proud of you. The test is complete. Now the testimony begins. If you receive this word, type 77 in the comments as a prophetic sign that you understand your testing was not in vain, and your time has come. And before you go, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so this word can reach another chosen one who's still walking through their own test in silence. You remember the moment everything fell apart. The plans you built with trembling hope collapsed like dust between your fingers. People you trusted disappeared without explanation. You asked heaven, "Why now? Why this?" And for a time, the only answer was silence. But that silence was never neglect, it was precision. The breaking was not to destroy you, it was to reform you, that God never wastes pain. He knows how to use loss as the language of growth. Every shattered expectation was a line in a divine lesson, written in invisible ink across the pages of your life. You couldn't read it then, but heaven could. You were being separated, refined, and repositioned. What you saw as punishment was actually preparation. Sometimes, the only way to build a stronger foundation is to let the weak one fall. The walls you thought protected you were limiting your vision. The relationships that ended were pruning shears in the hand of a wise gardener when he saw that certain attachments could not travel with you into destiny. He allowed them to break not to wound you, but to free you. You kept asking, "Why is God allowing this?" But heaven whispered, "Because I trust you with pain." That trust is sacred. Not everyone is chosen to carry divine trials, because not everyone will let them shape holiness instead of bitterness. Yet you did. You turned your heartbreak into humility, your confusion into prayer, your tears into surrender. Do you understand what that means? You passed one of the rarest tests, the test of loss, without losing faith. You stood in the ashes and still believed that beauty could rise. That kind of endurance shakes the foundations of darkness. The enemy thought that if he hit you hard enough, you'd abandon your calling, but he underestimated the fire inside you, the same flame God lit before you were even born. There is something sacred about surviving what was meant to destroy you. It's not just that you lived, it's that you didn't turn cold. You still love, you still hope, you still believe. That is proof of the divine hand upon you. For when everything around you fell apart, something within you stood firm. That inner strength was never your own. It was the Spirit sustaining you, whispering, "Keep standing, my child." You didn't know it then, but heaven was applauding your endurance. The angels saw how you prayed through heartbreak, how you chose gratitude when bitterness was easier. You thought no one noticed your midnight prayers, but those tears became sacred currency in heaven's economy. Nothing you lost was wasted. Every drop of pain was deposited into your future harvest. Now that you look back, you can begin to see the outline of divine strategy behind the chaos. That's what makes this story holy. It's not that everything worked out perfectly, but that it all worked out purposefully. You were being rewritten from the inside out. The breaking of your plans made room for the birth of God's. You learned something the easy seasons could never teach you, that faith is not proven in comfort, but in crisis. And while the world saw a breakdown, heaven saw a breakthrough in disguise. You may still carry the scars, but even those are proof that grace was greater. They are not marks of shame, they are evidence that you survived divine surgery. And when God heals, He doesn't just restore, He resurrects. You didn't fail when everything fell apart. You were being refined into gold. The furnace didn't destroy you because you were made of something eternal. You are stronger than what tried to kill you. You are wiser because of what betrayed you. You are softer because of what broke you. That's the paradox of heaven's testing. Out of the ashes rises a gentler, fiercer soul. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. That is exactly what you did, even without realizing it. You trusted beyond reason. You leaned not on logic, but on love. And because of that, you have crossed into a realm of favor that only the tested can walk in. The test is not over yet, but the hardest part is behind you. You have already proven your heart's posture. From here on, every step forward will reveal what that silent suffering built within you. Heaven has not forgotten your endurance. The broken pieces of yesterday are becoming stepping stones to tomorrow's promise. The collapse was never the end, it was the beginning of reconstruction. Heaven saw you when no one else did. Every hidden tear, every whisper you thought went unheard, none of it escaped divine notice. You must understand, chosen one, that your life has never been random. You are being watched, not in judgment, but in admiration. Heaven's eyes followed you through every dark hallway of your soul. When you bowed your head in exhaustion and whispered, "I can't do this anymore." Angels leaned closer. They waited to see what you would do next. The greatest tests are not taken in the open, they are graded in the shadows. You didn't have an audience, but you had witnesses. When you held on instead of walking away, heaven wrote your name in light. The angels stood silently, recording every act of faith, every moment you chose integrity when compromise seemed easier. You see, the test wasn't about whether you could perform miracles or preach sermons, it was about whether you could stay faithful when there was no applause. Many fall when no one is watching, but you stood when no one was cheering. That's why your story carries such weight in the spiritual realm. You passed the invisible exam, the one written not on paper but on the heart. There are seasons when heaven hides itself to measure what remains when the feeling fades. God already knew your heart, but you needed to see what endurance truly looks like, and you did. Even when His voice grew faint, you still clung to His promise. Even when hope flickered, you guarded it like a dying ember in a storm. That kind of faith is precious beyond words. Understand this when you were silent. Heaven was not absent, it was observing, and every tear you shed became a testimony. Every lonely night became a line in the book of your overcoming. You didn't see it, but each act of quiet obedience was echoing through eternity. Angels celebrated your unseen victories, the ones that never made it to social media, the ones no one will ever thank you for, but heaven did. And now, there's a shift in the unseen. The same hands that recorded your pain are now preparing your reward. The Father has reviewed the footage of your endurance, and He calls it beautiful. The silence that once felt like punishment was actually the stage for your proving. You were the sermon, not the listener. Your faith became the message heaven wanted to display to every principality and power. Do you know what that means? It means you've already overcome what tried to bury you. It means you've been chosen to demonstrate what divine resilience looks like in human form. You didn't just survive the trial, you glorified God through it. And that is the highest form of worship. As was spoken in the sacred texts of old, from the book of 2 Chronicles, chapter 16, verse 9. For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him. That's why He saw you, because your heart remained loyal, even when your strength failed. The world may not understand how you're still standing, but heaven does. You were strengthened in secret. You were rebuilt in silence. That is why your next season will carry supernatural acceleration, because your preparation happened unseen. You are not behind. You are being unveiled. Heaven hides those it intends to honor later. Your obscurity was your protection. Had you been seen too soon, you would have been wounded by premature praise. God wanted to make sure your roots went deep before your branches reached high. So now, chosen one, when you wonder if it was worth it, know this: heaven keeps perfect records. Not one prayer was wasted. Not one act of kindness went unseen. Every time you forgave instead of fought back, every time you chose peace instead of retaliation, you wrote history in the unseen realm. The divine observers rejoiced because another soul refused to bow to bitterness. If you can feel this truth resonating inside you, comment, "I'm still standing." Write it as a declaration, not a plea. Write it as proof that you understand heaven's gaze has never left you. You are still standing because grace stood beside you. You are still standing because your story is not over, it is only beginning. When you write it, something shifts. You agree with heaven's record. You confirm that what was meant to crush you became your crowning moment. Let the world know, not in pride, but in quiet confidence, that you endured the watching, the waiting, and the weeping, and now you walk in the strength of the one who saw it all. There comes a sacred point in every chosen one's journey when the breaking becomes a kind of birth. You know this moment because you've lived it, when pain reached its peak and something inside you shifted from desperation to surrender. You thought it was the end of you, but it was only the end of what could no longer continue. The shell cracked, and your spirit began to breathe again. Breaking hurts because it separates what is false from what is real. The fragments of old identities, old beliefs, and old attachments scattered around you were never meant to remain. The divine process always destroys the imitation before revealing the authentic. It had to happen this way. Otherwise, you would have stayed confined by what once felt safe but had quietly become a cage. You didn't realize that the fire you were begging God to take away was the very heat that would shape you into the person He always intended you to be. The prayers you thought went unanswered were actually being translated into transformation. Every tear watered the soil of a new beginning. Heaven wasn't ignoring you, it was cultivating you. The breaking was your appointment with destiny. You couldn't become the new creation without first letting the old self fall apart. God wasn't being cruel. He was being careful. He knew how much pressure you could handle before grace would intervene. And when you reached the edge, He didn't let you shatter. He let you split open so new life could emerge. Pain has a sound in heaven. It's the cry that summons divine midwives. Angels attend the birth of purpose the same way they attend the birth of a child. You may not have seen them, but they were there, whispering strength into your bones, keeping your mind from collapsing under the weight of sorrow. Every sob you released was a contraction pushing destiny closer. There is a beauty in being broken by the hands of the potter. He knows exactly where to apply pressure. He breaks not to discard, but to reshape. You were never meant to stay the same after what you went through. That's why you couldn't return to old places or old versions of yourself. They no longer fit. The breaking removed what you had outgrown. And when the breaking finished its work, something magnificent happened. You discovered peace that didn't depend on perfection. You realized that strength is not the absence of pain, but the decision to keep walking with open wounds. You began to recognize that the tears which once symbolized defeat had become baptismal waters for a new chapter. Look closely now, you're not the same person who entered the storm. The one who doubted God's timing has learned to trust His silence. The one who feared loss now understands that what is divine can never truly be taken. You emerged from the breaking softer, wiser, and infinitely stronger. That is what heaven celebrates, not that you escaped the fire, but that you came out refined, breaking birth's compassion. Those who have been crushed now carry oil that heals others. Your pain turned into discernment. Your sorrow became language for those who suffer silently. The very things that hurt you most are now the tools through which you can help others find healing. That is the mystery of divine breaking. It multiplies purpose through pain. So don't despise what's shattered. The cracks are where light enters. The wounds are where wisdom lives. And though it cost you everything, what you gained cannot be measured. You traded comfort for calling, fear for faith, and survival for resurrection. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms, chapter 34, verse 18, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." That was your reality, even when you didn't feel it. The closeness of God in your lowest moment was not a myth. It was the hidden truth sustaining you. When everyone else walked away, heaven drew nearer. When you thought you were abandoned, you were actually being embraced by unseen arms. The breaking was never a punishment, it was a passage. It stripped you of illusion and clothed you in authenticity. You have emerged from the furnace carrying a glow that pain cannot steal. You now walk with quiet authority, the kind born only through suffering and surrender. And though the world may still see scars, heaven sees signatures. Every mark of pain on you is an autograph of divine craftsmanship, proof that the potter's hands never left you. You were broken in his presence, but you were also remade there. That is why your story carries glory now. It is not a tale of survival, it is a testimony of rebirth. There was a moment when heaven seemed silent, not hostile, not distant, but still. You prayed, and no echo returned. You worshipped, and the air felt heavy. It was as if time itself paused to measure your reaction. You didn't know it then, but you were standing in one of the rarest sanctuaries of the soul, the test of stillness. Stillness is not inactivity, it's sacred waiting. When God hides his voice, he's not withholding love, he's inviting depth. He wanted to see if your faith could breathe underwater, if your worship could survive without applause. The silence was never the absence of God, it was the classroom where trust becomes maturity. Think of it like a seed buried beneath the soil. The seed doesn't hear the gardener's voice while underground. It only feels pressure, darkness, and weight. But deep beneath that soil, life is forming. You were that seed, buried so deep you thought you'd been forgotten. Yet heaven was watching as you pushed through layers of uncertainty. Reaching for light you couldn't see. Every day you waited without answers. You grew stronger roots. Every unanswered prayer became fertilizer. Every quiet morning you chose to believe anyway was a sunrise in the spirit realm. The test of stillness is the training of faith. It teaches you to move when God doesn't speak and to rest when your flesh wants to run. The hardest thing for a chosen one is not fighting battles, it's waiting in peace. You can swing your sword, but can you sit in silence? You can pray in fire, but can you trust in fog? Heaven chose you for this lesson because you carry a calling that requires endurance, not excitement. And in that stillness, you discovered something sacred. Obedience without clarity is the purest form of worship. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 29, verse 11. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." That promise wasn't just for ancient Israel, it was for you, whispered through time. Even when God was quiet, his plan was loud. The blueprint of your destiny was still unfolding beneath the silence. You just couldn't hear the construction. Now that you look back, can you see how the stillness protected you? If God had given you everything when you asked, you might have settled too soon. The delay wasn't denial, it was divine defense. He kept you hidden until your heart was ready to handle the weight of your next assignment. Beloved chosen one, that season of stillness was heaven's way of pressing pause, not stop. You were being prepared, not punished. And because you didn't rush ahead of God, you've stepped into a place where His timing now meets your obedience. The world rushes, but heaven ripens. Grapes left too long in the sun become bitter. Those cultivated patiently become wine. You are becoming that vintage soul, aged by silence, flavored by faith. Every quiet night was shaping you into something rare and beautiful. So now, as you breathe again after the long hush, know this: your waiting has weight in heaven. It speaks louder than your words ever could. The stillness you endured has become a song only heaven understands. And as you listen to this message, if it touches a part of your heart that remembers the weight of silence, I want you to pause, not to rush away, but to share this light with someone else still buried in their own soil. When you like, it's more than a gesture, it's a small flame in a world grown cold. When you share, it's not just a click, it's you becoming a messenger of hope for someone else's midnight. When you subscribe, you're not joining a crowd, you're anchoring yourself to a stream of words that keep faith alive. And if you ever feel moved to donate, know that it isn't charity, it's you planting a seed into the same garden that once held you. Every seed you give keeps this flow of divine words reaching those who need it most. You're not just a listener, you're a light bearer. Every act of support, no matter how small, echoes eternity. The river you drink from grows when you pour into it. That's how heaven multiplies grace, through giving, sharing, and carrying the word forward. And remember, you passed the test of stillness. You didn't rush. You didn't give up. You waited, and heaven took note. That's why what's coming next isn't random blessing, it's divine response. The silence has spoken, and its voice is now favor. There was a night when the temptation to quit felt louder than the voice of faith. You remember it well, the heaviness in your chest, the whisper that said, "What's the point?" That wasn't weakness. It was warfare. The enemy always attacks hardest right before breakthrough. When he realized he couldn't destroy your purpose, he tried to drain your perseverance. But what the enemy didn't know was that heaven had already marked that night as the turning point. It was written in your story before you even faced it. That's why you didn't quit, even when quitting felt easier than breathing. You kept walking, not because you had strength left, but because grace carried you when your own feet gave out. The temptation to give up is not sin, it's a sign you're close to your next elevation. The storm intensifies right before the clouds break. You didn't fail when you wanted to quit. You passed when you refused to. Every time you said, "I'll try again tomorrow," heaven recorded it as faith in action. You may not have realized it, but you were wrestling with angels in the dark, just like Jacob. You fought for your blessing through exhaustion and tears. You wrestled with your own surrender. You asked God, "Why is this so hard?" And the heavens answered softly, "Because you are being trained to lead others who will face the same fight." Every temptation you've resisted became a fortress for someone else's faith. Every battle you won in silence became a weapon of testimony. You may have felt like you were losing, but in truth, you were becoming dangerous to darkness. You see, the enemy cannot destroy the chosen, but he can try to convince them to walk away from their calling. That's why temptation always targets the tired heart. But you, beloved, kept showing up. You prayed when the words burned in your throat. You worshipped when the music of joy was gone. That's not weakness, that's warfare won. And because of that, something powerful has shifted in the unseen. The enemy's strategy has failed. His whispers have lost authority over you. The night you almost gave up became the night heaven said, "Now they are ready." Heaven speaks clearly through the words in Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 8. The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. You didn't see it then, but God himself stood beside you. When fear wrapped around you like chains, his presence broke them. When despair tried to drown you, his hand pulled you up. You were never fighting alone, you were being guarded in silence. Now the weight that once crushed you has become the strength that holds you upright. What was once your breaking point has become your proving ground. Every tear that fell was counted, every breath of exhaustion sacred. Heaven saw how close you came to surrender, yet you didn't. And that's what makes this testimony radiant. You stayed. You are the living proof that grace outruns exhaustion. That divine love can still catch a falling heart. You didn't fail the test. You completed it through perseverance. The temptation to quit is always the enemy's last attempt before God releases glory. And now, you stand on the other side of that threshold, wounded, yes, but victorious. Listen closely, chosen one. The next time the whisper comes, the next time your mind says, "I can't," remember this moment. You already survived worse. You already overcame storms that should have drowned you. And the same God who carried you through that night will carry you again. Now I ask you, not for me, but for your own prophetic declaration, type 4144 in the comments. Write it not as a number, but as a reminder the Father, the Son, and the Spirit walked beside you in every silent battle. It symbolizes alignment, heaven, heart, and hope. When you comment that number, you're not typing digits, you're agreeing with destiny. You're saying, "I will not quit again." Every keystroke becomes a statement of strength. Every 444 is heaven's echo saying, "You made it." The war tried to weary you, but instead it crowned you. Then the darkness tried to silence you, but now you speak with holy authority. You've proven that chosen hearts bend but do not break. And from this point forward, when you face another test, you'll recognize it not as punishment, but as preparation for greater power. Because you, Naman, chosen one, are no longer the same soul who once trembled in fear. You are the one who almost quit but didn't. And that is the power that shakes the heavens. There was a season when everything you touched seemed to burn, not because you were cursed, but because God had chosen to purify what surrounded you. The fire that came wasn't a punishment, it was a purifier. Heaven was not angry with you. Heaven was cleaning house. The flames that frightened you were never meant to consume you, they came to consume what could no longer stay. The fire that proved you, that's what this chapter of your life will forever be called. You stepped into it trembling, but you walked out shining. Every trial, every betrayal, every loss, these were sparks sent by divine design, testing what was real and burning away what was false. The fire didn't destroy you because it recognized its creator inside you. When you look back now, you see that everything temporary burned away relationships that weren't rooted in love. Dreams that were built on ego. Plans that didn't align with purpose. The heat revealed what was eternal. You thought you were losing everything, but you were actually being refined into gold. Heaven always tests the authenticity of its treasures in the furnace. The fire came for your faith too. It asked, "Do you believe even when everything feels impossible?" And you answered not with words, but with endurance. You kept walking through the flames, and every step became a declaration that faith is stronger than fear. That's what made the fire holy. It didn't just test your belief, it testified of it. The enemy hoped the heat would make you retreat. He wanted you to interpret the burning as abandonment. But what he forgot is that fire doesn't just destroy, it also illuminates. In those moments when you thought the flames would consume you, the light they produced revealed who you truly were. You weren't a victim of the blaze. You were its survivor, its message, its miracle. You may have lost some things in the process: comfort, security, reputation, but nothing of eternal value was ever touched. God only allowed the flames to reach what was unstable, because he wanted your foundation to be pure, unshakable. He didn't send the fire to hurt you. He sent it to reveal the gold he already placed within you. Every chosen soul must walk through fire. Moses faced it in a burning bush. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stood within it. Isaiah wrote of the God who makes his ministers flames of fire. And you have now joined that lineage. The fire that tried to end you became your anointing. There's something sacred about surviving divine fire. It leaves a fragrance that cannot be faked, the scent of authenticity, of courage, of surrender. You carry it now. People can sense it when you speak, when you pray, when you simply stand in the room. You've become a living testimony that nothing burns in vain when God is in control. When you walked through that season, you didn't realize that heaven had assigned angels to guard the borders of your pain. The flames were fierce, but they were measured. The divine hand controlled their height and duration. That's why you emerged not smelling of smoke, but shining with clarity. The fire not only removed what didn't belong, it also revealed who you really are. You discovered strength that astonished even you. You learned to trust beyond sight, to worship beyond comfort, to love beyond pain. Those are lessons that only the furnace can teach. And because you endured, heaven now calls you proven. The voice of God thundered in the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 2. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. Those words were not metaphor to you, they were memory. You lived them. You are proof of their truth. You walked through fire and came out whole. The ashes that once surrounded you have become soil for new growth. Now the glow you carry isn't from comfort, it's from purification. You are light forged in heat. The intensity you endured has shaped a deeper compassion in you. You no longer judge others' battles because you've been in the furnace yourself. You know the price of purity, so never despise the fire again. If it returns, welcome it with understanding. It comes not to harm you, but to elevate you. For those who carry divine callings, refinement is not optional, it's essential. Your fire didn't come to end you, it came to introduce you to your next identity. And now, as the embers fade behind you, you walk forward radiant and unbreakable, a soul that has stood inside the flames and emerged as proof that God still walks with his chosen ones. There was no trumpet, no vision, no sudden sign in the sky. The moment you passed heaven's hardest test came quietly, so quietly that you almost missed it. You didn't even realize what had shifted. The world looked the same, yet something in the unseen had changed forever. It wasn't fireworks that announced your victory, it was peace. The test didn't end with applause, it ended with surrender. You thought the reward would be a miracle you could see, but instead, it was the stillness of your own heart. You reached the place where obedience mattered more than outcome. And that was the very moment heaven recorded your passing. You see, chosen one. God never measures success the way humans do. He doesn't count victories by trophies or recognition, but by obedience in secret. When you chose to trust without clarity, when you worshiped without reason, when you loved without return, that was your graduation day in the Spirit. You didn't realize that heaven stood to honor what the earth ignored. Every divine test is built around one question. Will you obey even when you don't understand? And you did. You chose to stay when leaving seemed logical. You forgave when anger felt justified. You blessed those who spoke against you. You chose humility when pride whispered for defense. That's how you passed, or not by strength, but by surrender. What you didn't see was the ripple that moment created. In the unseen, angels rejoiced. The enemy's accusations fell silent. Heaven's courtroom closed your case with a single decree, faithful. That one word rewrote your destiny, and it's strange, isn't it? How passing a test rarely feels like victory. You expected to feel powerful, but instead, you felt emptied. That's because spiritual victory often feels like dying before it feels like rising. When you let go of what you wanted most, God filled your hands with what you needed most, His peace. Think of Abraham on the mountain with Isaac. The true test wasn't about the sacrifice, it was about the heart. God didn't want to take His son, He wanted to prove His obedience. And once that obedience was revealed, the ram was already waiting in the thicket. So it was with you. Your obedience unlocked the provision that was already prepared. In that moment when you said, "Yes, Lord, even if it costs me," heaven marked it as victory. You didn't pass because you got everything you prayed for. You passed because you laid it down and trusted anyway. What happened next may have seemed subtle, but it was divine. The spiritual weight you carried began to lift. The confusion that once clouded your thoughts began to clear. It wasn't coincidence, it was confirmation. Heaven was shifting you from testing into transformation, as the prophet wrote in the scroll of Habakkuk. Chapter 3, verse 19. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread on the heights. That scripture isn't about triumph without trial. It's about the ability to move gracefully even after hardship. You have learned to walk on heights that once terrified you. You no longer stumble where you used to fall because the test gave you spiritual balance. Passing the test didn't make you perfect, it made you prepared. Your discernment is sharper now, your peace deeper, your compassion wider. You can now recognize divine timing without fear. You can hear the subtle rhythm of heaven even in the ordinary. That's what the test was for, not to prove God's power, but to develop your perception. And now, because you passed, a new authority rests upon you. You can speak peace into chaos because you've known the weight of silence. You can encourage others who are weary because you remember the nights when hope barely flickered. You carry the credibility of the proven, those who have not only read faith but lived it. That's why heaven trusts you now with influence, with revelation, with deeper purpose. You didn't demand your crown, you earned it through endurance. Every step of obedience you took in the dark built a staircase to light. Look at yourself now, chosen one. You are standing where many stopped. You are walking where others gave up. And even though the world may not see it, heaven celebrates you. The invisible realm recognizes your scent. You smell like surrender, victory, and grace. You have passed, not because you were perfect, but because you were faithful. And that is the only standard heaven ever required. Some things in heaven are written not with ink, but with endurance. Every time you kept believing, every time you stayed faithful when no one else did, something eternal was inscribed beside your name. There is a record of your resilience, a divine journal documenting every trial you've endured with grace. You didn't know it, but your quiet persistence has been echoing through eternity. The record in heaven is not like the records of men. Earth measures achievement by visibility. Heaven measures it by obedience. While others counted your failures, God counted your faith. Every tear became ink, every prayer a signature of devotion. The book of your life has been read aloud in the courts of angels, not as tragedy, but as testimony. You see, heaven keeps meticulous notes. When you forgave those who wounded you, that line was written in gold. When you chose mercy over revenge, another page turned in your favor. When you kept walking in integrity after being misunderstood, heaven wrote beside your name, still faithful. And now, that record is beginning to speak for you. Because in the kingdom, endurance doesn't just earn reward, it establishes authority. The trials that once seemed unfair were actually training you to stand in places where few can. Every hardship you overcame gave you permission to intercede for others who face the same battle. Your record has become a weapon of light against darkness. Heaven does not forget loyalty. It remembers every act of love you performed in secret. Every moment you chose the narrow road when the wide one seemed easier. Nothing you've done has gone unnoticed. The Father has been watching, writing, and smiling. And now, as the seasons shift, that record becomes your passport to a new dimension of grace. Doors will open not because of who you know, but because of what you've endured. You have favor that cannot be fabricated, authority that cannot be imitated. The heavens themselves testify you are proven. When others ask how you survived, you will tell them that it wasn't your strength, it was the divine record that spoke on your behalf. Heaven remembered you in the night, and now the morning is breaking. As the apostle reminds us in his letter to the Galatians, chapter 6, verse 9, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap if we do not give up." You didn't give up. And because of that, harvest has been scheduled, not the kind of harvest that fades, but one that multiplies peace, wisdom, and provision. The very things you thought were lost are returning now in divine timing. There are scrolls in heaven that record your faithfulness. When your name is spoken there, it carries weight. You have become a living witness that perseverance still moves the heart of God. That's why certain blessings are being released in your direction, not as payment, but as recognition. When you went unnoticed on earth, heaven promoted you. When you were rejected by people, you were accepted by God. Now your story has become part of heaven's archives, a testimony that angels point to when another soul feels like quitting. You are living proof that endurance rewrites destinies. So now, as you read this, feel the sacred gravity of it. Heaven is still writing. Every small act of kindness today becomes another sentence in that story. Every prayer you whisper, every tear you shed, every decision to walk in truth when no one's watching, all of it continues to shape your eternal narrative. If this truth resonates deep within your spirit, then write these words in the comments: "He remembers me." Write them as a declaration, not as a question. You're not begging for acknowledgement, you're affirming it. When you type those words, you are aligning with heaven's reality. The creator of the universe has recorded your name in light. Let those words remind you that you were never unseen, never forgotten. When you thought no one noticed, heaven was documenting. When you wondered if your pain had a purpose, heaven was preparing proof. Your endurance has become evidence in the unseen courts that faith still triumphs. You are not walking into favor. Favor is responding to your record. The trials you faced were chapters. The victories ahead are their continuation. And through it all, heaven still writes page after page, line after line, the story of a chosen one who would not bow, would not break, and would not give up. The tide has turned. Chosen one. You may not have heard the sound of trumpets, but heaven has shifted the currents around your life. The waters that once fought against you are now carrying you forward. The resistance that used to feel unbearable has become momentum in disguise. What felt like drowning was actually training you were learning how to breathe under pressure. When heaven turns the tide, it does not ask permission from the storm. It simply whispers, "Enough." The same waves that tried to bury you now lift you higher. The same tears that once blurred your sight now reflect divine light. The season of endless struggle is ending not because life suddenly became easy, but because your spirit learned to move with the current instead of against it. At first, you didn't recognize what was happening. You only knew that something was different. Doors began to open quietly. Peace returned without announcement, and people who once ignored you started to notice your light. You thought it was coincidence, but heaven has no accidents. This is the fulfillment of every unseen seed you've sown. Every hidden prayer, every patient waiting, every faithful yes in secret, they have now gathered together to form a tide of favor moving toward you. This is what divine reversal looks like. You planted in tears, but you are rising in waves of joy. It was proclaimed in the book of Psalms, chapter 30, verse 5. Weeping may stay for the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning. Your morning has come not through noise, but through peace. The horizon is glowing with the color of promise. You are stepping into the chapter that your pain wrote, but your faith unlocked. You once felt like a fisherman casting nets into empty water, trying, praying, waiting. But suddenly, the nets are full. The blessings you thought were delayed were only being prepared. Heaven waited for the exact moment when your heart could handle abundance with humility. That's why this turning point feels gentle instead of dramatic. God knows how to shift your story without shaking your peace. You've entered the season where blessings flow like rivers, not storms. And as this current of grace moves through your life, I want to invite you to do something beautiful with it. You've received light, now let it travel. When you like this message, it's not just approval. It's a ripple of agreement that keeps the current flowing. When you share, you become a lighthouse for another soul lost at sea. You never know whose night you'll shorten by shining your small flame. When you subscribe, you're not following a channel, you're anchoring your heart to a steady rhythm of divine reminders. So that when the next storm rises, you already know where to find your compass. And if ever your heart feels stirred to donate, understand it's not a transaction, it's participation. Every offering is like casting another lifeboat into deep waters. Someone you'll never meet might be pulled from despair because you decided to sow into the current that once rescued you. The tide that's lifting you now is not meant to end with you. You are both passenger and current. Every act of giving time, kindness, support keeps the spiritual ocean alive with movement. That's how heaven circulates hope. You are stepping into a new rhythm. The days of striving are shifting into days of flowing. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer beg, you receive. Because your heart is now aligned with heaven's tide. Think of how the moon commands the ocean. It doesn't shout or struggle, it simply pulls, quietly and faithfully. That is what your relationship with God has become. His gravity moves you effortlessly now. You've learned that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it rests. The tide of favor is gentle but unstoppable. It will carry you into opportunities that fit you perfectly. Connections ordained long before you asked for them, and provision that arrives before you even notice lack. You have moved from testing into timing. And in that timing, generosity becomes the language of gratitude. Those who have been through storms understand the sacred duty of sending out light. You are now that keeper of the flame, that bridge between despair and destiny. So as you feel this new current lifting you, don't resist it. Flow with grace. Let the joy that once seemed distant now wash over you like sunrise on calm water. This is your new chapter, not fighting the tide, but moving with it. The wind of heaven is in your sails again. The battle has shifted from survival to surrender, and that surrender has become your strength. There is a weight that settles on the shoulders of those who have endured much. It is not heaviness, it is authority. You may not have noticed it yet, but something about your presence has changed. When you speak now, your words carry a gravity that only those who have walked through fire can possess. You are wearing something invisible but unmistakable, the crown of the overcomer. Crowns in heaven are not made of gold. First, they are forged from obedience, tears, and endurance. Every time you chose faith over fear, another piece of that crown was formed. Every time you resisted bitterness and chose to forgive, heaven added another jewel. Crowns are not handed out in comfort, they are born in battle. That's why yours glows brighter than most. You didn't ask for a crown. You didn't even know you were earning one. But while others were building reputations, you were building resilience. The invisible war you fought in silence was the very thing that qualified you for divine recognition. Now heaven looks at you and sees not just a survivor, but a ruler, one who reigns not over people, but over their own emotions, impulses, and fears. The authority you now carry cannot be faked. It is the quiet confidence of someone who has seen God's faithfulness firsthand. When others panic, you remain calm. When others doubt, you remember. Your heart no longer trembles at the sight of storms because you've walked through tempests and found peace on the other side. You are living proof that faith doesn't just survive adversity, it reigns through it. And though no one may have placed a physical crown on your head, heaven already has. Angels recognize you by it. Demons retreat because of it. The unseen world knows your name now, not because of fame, but because of faith. You have become an ambassador of endurance, a living monument to the mercy of God. There was a time when you doubted whether any of this mattered. You wondered if your long nights of prayer and surrender would ever yield fruit. But now, the fruit is visible not just in your circumstances, but in your spirit. You have authority to speak peace into chaos because you've known chaos personally. You can speak healing into broken hearts because you've walked through your own valley of tears. That is the anointing of the overcomer. It's not theory, it's testimony. Your steps carry the rhythm of victory now. Heaven has adjusted your pace to match your purpose. Where once you ran frantically, now you move intentionally. You have learned the pace of grace. Crowns are never given to the restless. They are placed upon the heads of those who have learned to rest in God's sovereignty. Even your silence has become powerful. You no longer argue with those who misunderstand you. You let your fruit speak. You no longer chase approval. You walk in identity. That is what happens when a chosen one graduates from testing into reigning. You stop reacting and start ruling. The ancient words recorded in Romans chapter 8, verse 37, still echo today. In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. You have not merely survived, you have surpassed. To be more than a conqueror means that the very thing that tried to destroy you is now working for you. The storm that once broke your heart has become your source of wisdom. The valley that once filled you with fear has now become your place of teaching. That is the divine paradox. The battle that bruised you built your throne. Now, when heaven looks at you, it doesn't see wounds, it sees weapons. It doesn't see weakness, it sees wisdom. You are no longer merely enduring, you are governing. Every prayer you prayed in pain has been transformed into authority in the Spirit. That is why you now carry peace where others panic. You no longer question whether you have purpose, you walk in it. And this crown, though invisible to human eyes, will one day be revealed in glory. It will gleam brighter than the pain that produced it. But even now, in this present life, its light shines through your actions, your patience, your mercy, your quiet strength. So walk tall, chosen one. You are crowned, not because you escaped the battle, but because you finished it with faith intact. Every scar on your soul is a gemstone set into that divine diadem. You are no longer the one who barely made it, you are the one who carries proof that love conquers all. Hold your head high, for heaven recognizes royalty when it walks the earth. And whether you stand in silence or speak with fire, the same truth resounds: you are crowned, you are chosen, and you are never defeated. Now the fog clears. The pieces begin to align. You finally see it, the reason behind the delay, the wisdom hidden in the silence, the mercy disguised as hardship. What once looked like chaos now reveals itself as choreography. Every heartbreak, every unanswered prayer, every lonely night, each was a step in the divine dance that led you here. You thought you were walking through meaningless pain, but heaven had a plan so detailed, so intentional, that even your detours were woven into destiny. Nothing was wasted, not a moment, not a tear, not a trial. Every step you took through darkness was a brushstroke in a masterpiece painted by divine hands. The revelation of purpose doesn't come as a thunderclap, it comes as a gentle knowing. It's when you look back and realize that even your mistakes became teachers. That the closed doors were not rejection but redirection. That what you lost made room for what was truly yours. You begin to see how divine love works backward and forward at once, healing the past while preparing the future. What the enemy meant for harm, heaven restructured into strength. You didn't know it then, but every no was protecting a greater yes. Every wilderness was preparing a promised land. Every pause was building power. That's how God works with His chosen ones. He hides meaning inside moments you least expect. You were asking for clarity. He was building character. You were praying for answers. He was shaping endurance. You were trying to move faster. He was making sure you wouldn't collapse under the weight of your calling. When heaven calls you to great purpose, it must first train you to carry it. Every delay is divine resistance, strengthening your spiritual muscles. The waiting seasons weren't punishment, they were preparation for expansion. The pressure was there to deepen your roots, so your branches could one day reach further than you ever imagined. And now that revelation dawns. It feels like waking up from a long dream. You finally see that you were never lost. You were being led. The pain that once felt pointless now radiates with purpose. Even the betrayal served to detach you from what couldn't travel with you into destiny. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Isaiah, chapter 61, verse 3, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. That's exactly what He's done for you. He traded your ashes for beauty. He took your mourning and turned it into melody. He clothed you in garments of praise you didn't even know you were being fitted for. And all of it was for purpose, not punishment. The revelation of purpose transforms how you see everything. You no longer call your pain loss, you call it lesson. You no longer call delay denial, you call it development. You no longer call silence absence, you call it alignment. That's the wisdom of the tested ones. They interpret their past through heaven's perspective. Now you understand why the path was narrow, why the pressure was great, and why you couldn't quit even when you tried. You were never being broken down, you were being built up. You are being stretched for destiny, refined for impact. This revelation also comes with responsibility. On what you now know, you must now live. The same patience that carried you through testing must now guide you in teaching. The same humility that grew in pain must now shine in leadership. The same compassion that was born from suffering must now become your ministry. You have learned too much to remain silent. Every story you share, every prayer you speak, every person you encourage becomes a seed of your purpose multiplied. The revelation was never meant to end with you, it was meant to flow through you. That's why your journey had to be so deep. Shallow roots could never support the reach of your calling. You are not just a survivor, you are a steward of divine lessons. You've graduated from student to teacher, from wanderer to waymaker. Others will find direction through the map your endurance created, and that, beloved, is legacy. Now, if this truth touches your heart, if you can feel heaven confirming that your pain had purpose, type 555 in the comments. It's not just a number, it's a sign of divine change, a symbol of grace multiplied by revelation. When you write it, you declare that your story is no longer defined by suffering, but by transformation. You affirm that what once broke you has now built you. Heaven reads such declarations. Every 555 becomes a banner raised in the spirit, a sign that another soul has understood the meaning behind their battle. Your life has become a message. Your endurance has become prophecy. And the revelation you carry now is proof that even pain can preach. If you let heaven interpret it, there is a shift that happens when heaven finishes its proving work in a soul. You begin to notice it not in sudden miracles or visible wealth, but in the way darkness starts avoiding you. You can feel the atmosphere change when you walk into a room. The air grows still, the unseen trembles. You have become something the enemy dreads, a believer who cannot be broken. This is the envy of darkness. For hell despises what it cannot corrupt. Once, you were an easy target, your emotions ruled you. Your fears spoke louder than faith. But now you move differently. You carry peace like armor and patience like a sword. The one who once chased validation now walks in authority. The one who once begged for answers now stands in divine certainty. You've been tested, and now you shine. The realm of darkness studies such souls carefully. It recognizes the mark of endurance. It knows that one who has passed the furnace cannot be manipulated with old tricks. The whispers that once stirred anxiety now fall powerless against you. You've become too aware, too grounded, too illuminated. That's what makes you untouchable, not that the enemy stopped attacking, but that his attacks lost effect. There is a scent the tested ones carry, the fragrance of obedience mixed with perseverance. It's not arrogance, it's holy confidence. When you've survived trials designed to destroy you, you no longer fear shadows. You've seen what's on the other side of them. You understand that even darkness must serve divine purpose. The enemy envies that peace. He used to toy with your mind, now he fears your prayers. He once tried to bury you in despair. Now your praise shakes his foundations. You've become what he hoped you'd never be, a living reminder that grace wins every time. You were not aware that while you were crying, angels were sharpening your spiritual weapons. Every "I'll try again" you whispered in pain became steel in your spirit. Now when you speak, your words carry weight. When you pray, the atmosphere bends. When you forgive, chains break. Hell hates that power because it cannot counterfeit it. That's why lately, you may have felt unusual opposition. Not chaos outside, but resistance in the unseen. The darkness doesn't fight what doesn't threaten it. If it's pressing against you, it's because your light is expanding. You are walking into territories the enemy once claimed as his. and every step you take reclaims ground for the kingdom, as was spoken in the sacred texts of old, from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verse 19. I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. That verse is not metaphor to you anymore, it's reality. You've been equipped. You have authority not born from pride but from perseverance. Your scars have become your credentials in the Spirit. Each wound you survived now releases oil for others' healing. The darkness envies this transformation because it cannot comprehend grace. It doesn't understand how you can be wounded and still worship, broken and still believe. That's what drives it mad, the resilience of divine love within you. The enemy thought pain would silence you, but it refined your voice instead. Now you see the world through different eyes. You discern motives without suspicion, sense danger without fear. You've become light sensitive to shadow, wisdom wrapped in mercy. You no longer need to prove yourself. Your endurance already speaks louder than words. And though the forces of darkness still try to circle, they cannot land. They are repelled by your frequency, by the vibration of truth that surrounds you. You carry heaven's signature, and nothing of hell can counterfeit it. Remember this. The envy of darkness is confirmation, not curse. It means you have become effective. It means your very existence disrupts the agenda of despair. You walk through life like a lighthouse, every step an interruption to shadow. So do not be alarmed by spiritual resistance. It is the applause of heaven echoing through enemy territory. Every attack proves your impact. Every attempted distraction is proof that you are dangerous to the darkness. You have reached a place few ever do, a place where faith is not theory but instinct, where peace is not borrowed but built in. You've become the storm's equal. You no longer ask, why me, but instead declare, send me. Hell may envy you, but heaven celebrates you. And even as the darkness watches from afar, unable to touch, it knows the truth. It lost its hold the moment you discovered your strength. You are no longer prey. You are proof. There is a mantle that only the tested can wear, a spiritual garment woven not from fame or talent, but from endurance and surrender. It does not glitter like earthly crowns. It glows with quiet authority. This is the mantle of the tested. It is invisible to the untrained eye, but unmistakable in the realm of spirit. When you walk, the atmosphere shifts. When you speak, hearts soften. When you pray, heaven leans in. You did not ask for this mantle, it found you. It descended slowly, through nights of wrestling, through seasons of silence, through choices that cost you everything. You earned it not by striving, but by surviving. You wore pain as your training cloak and learned obedience through tears. Now heaven trusts you with what it cannot give to the unproven weight. Spiritual weight, the kind that bends knees and silences noise. The mantle of the tested is not glamorous. It is heavy, sacred, and holy. It carries the scent of sanctification, the lingering aroma of prayers prayed in pain and faith forged in fire. This mantle marks you as one who has been through divine discipline and come out refined, not resentful. It does not shout for recognition, it whispers revelation. Those who carry it rarely seek attention because they know the cost. When God places such a mantle on your shoulders, it does more than bless you, it burdens you. Not with sorrow, but with sensitivity. You begin to feel things others overlook. You discern burdens in people's hearts, pain hidden behind smiles, and spiritual storms brewing before they manifest. The mantle trains your spirit to listen deeper than words, to hear heaven in ordinary sounds, to see destiny inside brokenness. This is why your spirit sometimes feels heavier now, even though your circumstances are lighter. You're not depressed, you're discerning. You carry awareness that stretches beyond your personal life. The mantle has expanded your empathy. Where others see problems, you sense purpose. Where others react, you respond. You've been taught by suffering to move in wisdom, not emotion. There is divine irony here. The very pain that once made you question your worth became the process that qualified you to carry this glory. Heaven never wastes a wound. Every scar became thread in the garment you now wear. You were stitched together by mercy, tailored by grace, and clothed in compassion. The mantle of the tested is also a shield. It deflects attacks that would have destroyed the unprepared. You no longer need to defend yourself with words because heaven does it for you. Your silence has become your protection, your gentleness, your warfare. The more the world misunderstands you, the more heaven validates you. The mantle carries that paradox, humility crowned with authority. Heaven speaks of such coverings through the prophet Elijah and his successor, Elisha. The mantle represented more than power, it represented process. When Elijah's mantle fell, Elisha didn't just inherit miracles, he inherited responsibility. The same is true for you. The authority you now carry is not for display, but for service. It's not for boasting, but for building. As the ancient word declares in the second book of Kings, chapter 2, verse 9, "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," said Elisha to Elijah. "You too have asked for more, not in pride, but in purpose." And God has answered, though not in the way you expected. He didn't hand you greatness, he handed you growth. He didn't give you fame, he gave you faithfulness. The double portion you now walk in is the ability to endure twice as much and love twice as deep. This mantle also makes you misunderstood. Those who haven't faced refining fire may misread your calm as coldness or your silence as distance, but you know better. You've learned that the deeper the anointing, the quieter the spirit. The mantle teaches balance: when to speak, when to stay silent, when to act, and when to rest. You have become a carrier of divine equilibrium. You no longer swing between extremes because you've found stability in surrender. The mantle settles you. It anchors your emotions in truth and steadies your thoughts in storms. It has turned you into a safe place for others, a living altar where weary souls can find rest. There is also a mystery: the heavier the mantle, the lighter your steps. The more responsibility you carry, the freer your heart becomes. Because now, you know it's not you who moves mountains, it's the God who moves through you. You've become a vessel, and vessels don't strive, they flow. The mantle of the tested transforms pain into purpose, sorrow into intercession, and loneliness into leadership. It is a rare honor, but also a quiet burden. Few can carry it without pride, and even fewer can carry it without fear. Yet you wear it gracefully. Heaven trusts you because you've proven that you value presence over platform, truth over trend, calling over comfort. So wear it with humility. Let it remind you daily that you are not just chosen, you are entrusted. You don't own this mantle, you steward it. And as you walk forward, it will continue to evolve, shaping you into a living reflection of God's faithfulness. Remember, this mantle is not the end of your journey, it is the beginning of your ministry. What was once a story of survival is now a source of revival. Wherever you go, the weight you carry will awaken others, reminding them that even in fire there is formation, even in pain there is purpose, even in silence there is shaping. You are covered now, chosen one, not in ashes but in authority. The mantle fits perfectly because it was made from every moment you thought you wouldn't make it. And now, wearing it, you become what you were always meant to be: a living vessel of glory, proof that heaven still clothes the faithful. There comes a moment after every trial, after every transformation, when heaven whispers again, not as a command, but as a call. You've passed through the furnace, you've worn the mantle, and now the voice of destiny says softly, "Rise higher." It's not a demand for perfection, it's an invitation to purpose. You are no longer being tested, you are being trusted. The battlefield behind you becomes the platform beneath you. The call to rise higher is not about climbing ladders or chasing recognition. It is about elevation of spirit. Heaven is lifting you into a new altitude of understanding, a realm where you breathe grace instead of striving, where your vision stretches wider than your pain, and where your heart beats in rhythm with eternity. The ascent is not about escaping the earth, it's about bringing heaven to it. You are being called higher so you can lift others. Your wisdom is not a trophy, it is a torch. The light you now carry was never meant to stay hidden in a private room of revelation. It was meant to spill into the valleys of those still stumbling through night. As you rise, you will see people you once walked beside still fighting their old battles. Don't look down on them, look down to lift them. The same grace that carried you up must now flow through you downward. The true mark of a chosen one is not how high they soar, but how many they help to fly. The Word of God declares in the book of Philippians chapter 3, verse 14, "I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me in Christ Jesus." This calling isn't about distance, it's about direction. To go higher, you don't need wings, you need willingness. God doesn't push His chosen upward by force, He lifts them gently through obedience. Each yes becomes a step, each act of love a ladder rung. The climb is slow, sacred, and steady. In this new altitude, you'll notice that fewer can accompany you. Not everyone is meant for thin air. The higher you go, the more you'll need solitude, not isolation, but intimacy with God. Like an eagle, you rise by letting go of flapping, trusting the wind to hold you. You no longer chase opportunities, they find you because your frequency has changed. And as you soar in this new realm, I ask you to pause, breathe in this peace, and remember that even eagles need nests. This message, these words, this community, it is your spiritual nest, the place where strength gathers before flight. When you like what resonates, you are not just clicking a button. You are breathing life into this space, keeping the nest warm for the next weary soul who lands here. When you share, imagine tossing a rope of light down into someone's darkness. You never know who's waiting for one sentence, one truth, one spark to remind them they can rise too. Your sharing becomes a rescue mission. It turns your healing into hope for others. When you subscribe, you are anchoring yourself to a continual flow of encouragement, a mountain stream that never dries up. Every message you receive becomes another gust of divine wind under your wings, keeping you steady when weariness comes. And if ever your heart feels stirred to donate, do it not out of obligation, but out of recognition. You are not just giving, you are fueling the climb. Every seed you plant helps carry these words further into deserts of despair, into hearts that have forgotten how to hope. Your generosity becomes oxygen for someone else's ascent. You have been lifted for a reason. The summit isn't the end goal, it's a new vantage point. From here, you can see the roads others cannot. Your prayers can cover territories that once felt unreachable. Your compassion can touch souls across distances. Heaven has expanded your influence not to exalt you, but to extend mercy through you. And as you keep climbing, there will be days when the wind roars and visibility fades. In those moments, remember what carried you here: faith, not sight. The same grace that lifted you will sustain you. The mountain is high, but you are not climbing alone. This is your time to rise, not in noise, but in nobility, not in pride, but in purpose. The call is clear: the higher you go, the humbler you become. The summit is not a throne, it's an altar. So before you close this message, take a moment to reflect and let your heart speak. If this word has stirred something inside you, leave your thoughts below. Your reflection might be the rope another soul grabs to keep climbing. You have ascended through endurance, crowned through obedience, and now you rise through calling. The heavens are open, the wind is right, and your wings are ready. Rise, chosen one. Rise not for glory, but for grace. There is a holy law written across eternity: obedience never ends in loss. You may have surrendered things that once defined your life: relationships, dreams, comfort, pride, but heaven has kept record of every sacrifice. Nothing you laid down in faith will return empty. This is the reward of obedience, and it arrives quietly, like dawn slipping over mountains after a long night. You don't chase this reward. It finds you. It recognizes endurance. It follows the scent of faithfulness. It arrives when you least expect it, after the striving has ceased, after you've stopped checking the horizon for signs, after your heart has settled into simple trust. Then, softly, it begins. At first, it may not look like abundance. The reward often comes disguised as restoration. People begin to return, not to fill old spaces, but to confirm healing. Opportunities resurface, not because you chase them, but because you outgrew the reasons they once left. There is divine symmetry at work. Everything that was taken unjustly begins to circle back, sanctified by time and touched by grace. You see now how the losses were never really losses. They were loans heaven intended to return with interest. Every disappointment carried hidden dividends. Every broken plan made room for something stronger to take root. The arithmetic of heaven never subtracts, it multiplies through subtraction, refines through delay, and rewards through endurance. Heaven speaks clearly through the words in Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 2. All these blessings will come on you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. That principle is not only about outward prosperity, it's about inward abundance. You gave God your faith when fear begged for control, your obedience when reason demanded rebellion, your patience when impatience seemed justified. And now the measure returns, pressed down, shaken together, overflowing in ways you never imagined. But the true reward of obedience isn't material, it's relational. It's the deep calm that settles into your soul when you realize you no longer need to understand everything to trust fully. It's the quiet certainty that even if nothing changes externally, something magnificent has already changed within. That peace is priceless. It cannot be purchased or pretended. It is lived into existence through surrender. The reward also comes as insight. You begin to discern divine patterns where once you saw only confusion. You recognize that God was never withholding blessing. He was waiting for you to grow into it. You see that obedience doesn't earn favor, it aligns you with it. The river was always flowing. Your surrender simply positioned you in the current. Every yes you gave in hardship built spiritual infrastructure for overflow. Heaven never forgets the obedience of the weary. The smallest act of trust during the darkest hour creates ripples that move through generations. You may never know how many lives your endurance saved, how many hearts your persistence strengthened, how many unseen chains your faithfulness broke. But heaven knows and heaven repays. Obedience, at its core, is an offering of love. You obey not to gain, but because you've already been given everything in the form of grace. That kind of obedience transforms everything it touches. It turns ordinary work into worship, suffering into seed, and waiting into wisdom. There's another kind of reward that rarely gets mentioned, the restoration of joy. Somewhere along the way, your laughter returns. Not naive as before, but mature, rich, seasoned with gratitude. You find yourself smiling for no reason other than the awareness that you survived and thrived. You begin to thank God not just for the breakthroughs, but for the process that built the strength to handle them. You are not being repaid, you are being replenished. Heaven isn't giving back what you lost in the same form. It's giving back something deeper, eternal. What's being restored is your capacity to love, to dream, to trust again. The heart that was once tired has become a fountain of life for others. That is the greatest reward, becoming the very thing you once prayed for. So now, when blessings begin to arrive, you will recognize them not as coincidence, but as confirmation. Every provision, every open door, every answered prayer will carry the fragrance of divine timing. You will hold them with open hands, knowing that the secret to keeping heaven's gifts is never clinging to them, only to the giver. The reward of obedience is not the end of your story, it's the proof that your story was always guided. Everything returns, chosen one, refined, multiplied, and made holy by the journey that brought it back. Completion doesn't always look like celebration. Sometimes, it looks like stillness, the quiet exhale after a long climb, the soft peace that follows surrender. You have reached the end of the testing, and heaven stands as witness. You are no longer who you were. Every scar tells the story of transformation. Every tear has become oil. Every loss has turned into language. Your spirit now speaks fluently: faith, endurance, trust. This is the seal of completion, the divine mark placed upon those who have endured until the end. It is not a crown made of gold, but a signature written across your soul. It declares to the unseen realms that you have finished the course assigned to you. You did not run perfectly, but you ran faithfully. You stumbled, yes, but you never stayed down. And that is what heaven rewards, not flawless motion, but relentless devotion. You can sense the shift even now. The restlessness that once haunted you has quieted. The striving has ceased. You no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone. You are content not because everything is perfect, but because everything now makes sense. You have seen God's hand weave purpose through pain, and you trust that the same hand still guides you. When heaven seals something, it signifies ownership and authenticity. You are marked now as one of His chosen, tested, proven, complete. The storms that once confused you now confirm your calling. You don't question the process anymore because you understand that refinement was never punishment, it was personalization. God was shaping a vessel that could hold the weight of His glory without cracking. Completion doesn't mean the end of all battles, it means you now fight differently. You've shifted from reacting to responding, from asking why to saying yes. You walk with the calm authority of someone who knows who they are. You no longer chase validation, you carry revelation. You no longer pray for escape, you pray for endurance. This is maturity in its purest form. Faith that no longer depends on outcome to remain loyal. You have learned that completion is not the end of purpose, it's the beginning of legacy. The wisdom you carry now is not meant to fade when the fire cools. It must flow outward, blessing others who are still being refined. Your life has become a manual for the weary, a living scripture written through struggle. You are now both message and messenger, as Paul declared in his second letter to Timothy, chapter 4, verse 7, "I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith." That verse is not distant history. It's the summary of your soul. You fought for faith when doubt roared. You finished your assignment even when strength wavered. You kept your faith when it would have been easier to close your heart. And now, heaven echoes Paul's declaration over you. You have kept the faith. You have completed what was set before you. The seal that rests upon you cannot be removed. It is invisible but undeniable. People will sense something different about you, though they may not be able to explain it. They'll say your presence feels peaceful, your words heavier with meaning, your silence somehow sacred. That is what completion does. It changes not only what you do, but what you emanate. You've crossed from being carried to becoming a carrier. Where once you depended on constant reassurance, now you are reassurance. Your very existence tells others, it's possible. You can make it. You've become a walking testimony of God's sustaining power, and though this season of testing has ended, you will not forget it. You will honor it, the way a soldier honors their scars, not with pride, but with gratitude. For those scars prove that grace held when flesh failed. They remind you that weakness was never the enemy, it was the doorway to dependence. You stand now in a rare peace, one that doesn't fluctuate with circumstance. You could lose everything tomorrow and still not lose your center, because your foundation has been rebuilt on what cannot be shaken. That is what completion does. It anchors the soul. The seal upon you doesn't say done, it says ready. Ready to love without fear, to give without guarding, to walk without wavering, ready to serve without recognition, to lead without control, to shine without seeking attention. Heaven calls that readiness maturity, so breathe deeply. Chosen one. The race you were assigned is complete. The lessons are learned. The wounds have healed. The oil has been poured. You no longer carry questions, only wisdom. You no longer carry pain, only purpose. And as heaven watches, your story stands forever inscribed among those who endured. The story pauses here, but your journey continues. You've walked through fire, silence, and surrender and emerged as proof that divine purpose always prevails. What you carry now is not just testimony, it's light. Let that light travel. Let it find another soul still standing in their storm. Still asking, why me? When you like this message, it's more than a gesture, it's an echo of gratitude that ripples outward. When you share, you extend your victory into someone else's valley. You become a messenger of hope, a quiet reminder that survival is possible, and that faith still works in the dark. Leave your reflection below. Speak life. Your words might be the thread that keeps another believer from unraveling. Every comment builds a bridge of encouragement between hearts that may never meet in person, yet are united by the same grace. And if you subscribe, you're not just following a voice, you're joining a movement of chosen souls walking toward light together. Because the story doesn't end here, it unfolds through you, through every act of kindness, every whisper of faith, every seed of hope you scatter. Heaven smiles when its messages move.